Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today. My name is Kevin Navratil. I'm the coordinator for Global and Diversity Education. Thank you to all the faculty members who brought their classes or offered this for extra credit. I believe there's some sign-in sheets on the side for students to sign in before you leave. I wanted to let you know, too, the guys from What Matters have a table set up with some information about their organization. There's a lot of people who helped put this event together today, and I want to recognize their efforts. I want to thank Amanda and Multimedia for your help in capturing this event so people can watch this afterwards. I want to thank Troy Swanson and all the library staff to help set this up for us today. I want to thank Tamara Hill-Coleman, the Democracy Commitment Coordinator, for help co-sponsoring this. And you'll notice that there's a lot going around in the library today. Mike McGuire has worked really hard through the Act Out through Education Fair. You notice that there's a lot of groups, nonprofit groups who are here. So there's also got to be some student presentations from 1 o'clock and 2:30 today on their work on poverty. So I'm sure today you're going to get pretty fired up about poverty, global poverty, and the What Matters guys are going to talk about their experiences. There's a lot of ways for you guys to get involved, and I hope that you mingle around and check out some of the tables outside the library. Dan, Rob, and David, the What Matters guys, are here with us today. They've been working on this project for over 7 years. In that process, they've traveled to 15 different countries, living on $1.25 a day. They're very excited to be here today, and at the end of their 25-minute film, they're going to be here to answer any questions and comments that you may have. So thanks again, and there's still plenty of seats up front for those who are coming in.
So what'd you guys think? So that's actually, the film is actually 90 minutes, and so we cut it all down into that 20-minute version to kind of cram it into your class period. So just so you know, there's a lot of other crazy stuff that happened besides that crazy stuff. So do you guys have any questions about anything in the film? Rob's got these magic fingers that if you don't ask questions, he has the ability to make hands raise. So
it's going to get awkward.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Okay, so I think to rephrase this question, let me know if it's right. How do you think spending time in like slums in Africa, how does that poverty compare to some of the poverty we experience maybe in the inner city or in rural areas of America?
Yeah, that along with your reaction to it as far as
Yeah, and what was our reaction to both of those experiences, and how do we think we can be a part of it? So kind of a three-parter. I would say, I think we touched on it a little bit, but there's like almost very small people in America that live in the definition of extreme poverty because that comes with no access to clean water. And so in most situations we can find clean water, except for in maybe remote areas like Indian reservations or West Virginia type of things. We can go into a restaurant or somewhere and get free water, or just stick our head under the faucet. And in the original version, I actually kind of make a joke out of it, and I stick my head in a toilet. Like, it looks like stick my head in the toilet. Like, the cleanliness of the water in the toilet might be cleaner than other places that people are experiencing. So that's just like one example of how an extreme poverty in some places in Africa might compare to extreme poverty in, say, certain parts of Chicago. But in the same time, they overlap a lot, I would say. And I think for us, one of the biggest experiences we realize is that extreme poverty isn't always just your material access, but it's also who do you have to fall back on? And I think in some ways, people experiencing poverty in America have it worse because, people in homelessness that don't have any family they're still connected to or have ruined those relationships because of drugs, alcohol, those type of things. They have nobody to fall back on. They have nobody to bring them in if something's happened. And in places in Africa, you just find this incredible community that if you are struggling, like a lot of times your community and your family will rally around you. So though you have maybe less material wealth, you have a community wealth that is almost greater than that. And I think that was something we experienced, is that no matter how much we tried to experience this extreme poverty, we still had family we could call. We still had credit cards we could pull out in an emergency. We still even had health insurance back in America. So we had all these kind of safety nets that a lot of people don't have in both situations. If you guys want to kind of share.
That's what I was going to say, that last part.
You rocked it. It's cool.
Stole all their answers, yeah. There was a question back somewhere. She just yelled it.
I just want to know how long your trip was.
So how long was the trip?
We were filming the movie for about 2 or 3 years before that, kind of doing pre-production. Went out to California, did some man-on-the-street interviews in Southwest Missouri and St. Louis. The actual trip was July 5th. The plane crash was August 1st, and I was back in the United States within probably a week after that. David stayed for another 2 months after that in Africa. Was that right?
3.5, actually.
See, I'm totally wrong. So a long time, yeah.
How did your life feel after that whole experience?
How did our life feel after that whole experience? Immediately after the trip, my life felt like pain because I was...
it feels like burning.
It feels like hurts. Pain hurts bad is a very deep statement there. But I actually, when you see the full film, you'll see that it took me about 9 months to recover. I ended up losing 45 pounds. I had fractured my L3 vertebrae. It crunched about 40%. But the real damage is that the seatbelt, it damaged my intestines. And as it tried to heal, like scar tissue kind of got it all kinked up. And so basically my intestines were like someone kinked a hose. And so like stuff could barely move through. I had to like eat baby food and drink shakes. And I was in and out of the hospital about 5 or 6 times. And finally I took this pill that has a camera inside of it, and it takes pictures of your intestines as it goes down, and mine got stuck. And so the doctor's like, did it ever come out? And I'm like, I never saw it, And so we go in, we get an x-ray, and they take an x-ray, and there's just like a big jelly bean in my stomach. And so they were like, oh, that's where your block is. So they went in and they cut in 10 inches of my intestines out. And then they put it back together, and I was able to gain that weight back and do really well. So that immediate time was very difficult. It was actually much harder than the journey for me.
I would say there were a couple different elements in terms of just coming back that you wrestle with. One is, for me at least, was actually judgmentalism of other people, even actually specifically Christians. Even though I still considered myself one, I was very judgmental of other Christians, just saying, how can you live the way that you are when people are living in extreme poverty? So that was something I had to wrestle through a lot, and also realized that I was being a hypocrite because the Bible that I say I believe in calls me not to judge. So I was like, dang. All right. So that was one element of, and just feeling like, yeah, no one really understands, what you had just gone through and the ways that you were transformed. But then at the same time, I was also able to celebrate kind of just a complete like reprioritization of what I thought was important before going on this trip, and then meeting people that loved me better than I loved the members of my own family, and just realizing that it's not about money or material possessions that give us fulfillment and happiness, but it's more so about the people around us. So yeah, I was also set free in a lot of ways.
For me, it was a little bit different of an experience. Like, I wasn't as hurt in the plane crash, but my brain was just messed up. I tried to go back in and get the other guy out after getting Dan out, and I pretty much watched him burn to death. I don't know if it really got into that in this cut, but that stayed with me for 3 months. Like, I just could barely even function. I wasn't sleeping a whole lot. And it took me those 3 months to just get to a point of, okay, I can start tackling this. I started watching the footage of the plane crash and trying to just face it head on. And after that, it was about a year-long process of kind of picking up the pieces and just figuring everything out. And then slowly, I started to try and turn all that negative energy and that fear of death into a positive thing. I think I'm at a point now where I bought a foreclosed house after that. I don't think that's in this cut. And then I ended up building this giant Nerf battlefield in my backyard. This community that I've created has like 150 to 200 people that we play every other week, where we just get together and drink beer and then shoot each other with Nerf guns. And it's just covered in art everywhere. My whole house is covered in murals. And so it's just like, it's that energy going towards good things. And rather than worrying about, I'm going to die, worrying about, I need to live, you know.
Have you guys been back to any of the places that you guys visited?
David, you want to talk a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, let's see. I've been back to Uganda. We met a girl, I don't think she's in this version, a girl named Katie Davis, who wrote a book called Kisses from Katie, and she's like 24, and she's adopted 14 girls. She's lived in Uganda for the last 5 years. So, yeah, we met her during the filming of this. I did, and spent a couple days with her, and got close to like marrying her almost. It's still in the process of us, figuring out what a relationship might look like. But she's amazing, and so I've been back to visit her once in 2011, so 2 years later, and I've actually gone back to Malawi. It wasn't a specific place that we went to during the filming of this documentary, but I've started a ministry called When the Saints, like when the saints go marching in. And I'm actually going in like less than 2 weeks to open up a home we've been building for the last 2 years that will do counseling and vocational training for teenage girls who have been sexually abused and forced into prostitution. And we also are going to do mentorship and discipleship with the men who are engaging themselves in the abuse of these teenage girls to help them get set free from their addiction to sexual abuse. And so so I've been going back, regularly. And you guys can check out the website if you want, just winthesaints.com.
Cool. And we're actually making a follow-up documentary about what David's doing and about Rob's doing. So if you go to Win the Saints, you'll see the trailer for the Win the Saints film, which will be touring around the country this summer. And then we're making a film called Thunderdome, and you can see the trailer for that. You have to actually get on our email list because that isn't like public yet, but we can share you the trailer for that documentary.
Hi. I just kind of wondered if you would address, when you think of Africa, a lot of times what's portrayed in the news is the political unrest, the wars. And, to me that spells fear. So did you have fears being where you were of, something, well, besides the crash, something happening politically that you wouldn't be able to get out of or anything like that?
I'll start and you finish. I was afraid of everything pretty much the entire trip. You're going to get a very different response from David in that, and I think I really believe I had PTSD before I left the United States. So pretty much a week into it of living on the streets, kind of like sleeping in cornfields and constantly feeling like we're going to get robbed or killed. That was pretty rough, and that was like the safest place. We're in the United States. We haven't even been to the bad parts of the world yet where I should really be afraid. And then we get a plane crash, so figure that into it. I didn't really know about the civil unrest. Africa was just, there's so much diversity in the culture and just everything, and every country has its own little situation. So I really didn't worry about all of that, just because I knew that it's case by case basis. When you get there, you'll deal with it. David's probably got a better explanation for that.
I like to chime in too. Like, one thing is that Africa is just massive. Like, actually, there's a thing called the Peters map that shows that our typical globe doesn't represent how large and huge Africa is. So it's so diverse, and like people have a lot of times even problems with our film. We just kind of throw Africa in there because it's so different. You even got sub-Saharan Africa and regular, Northern Africa, which are very, very different. And then even country to country is different. And I think one way to compare it is St. Louis, where we're all from, is a lot of times ranked one of the most dangerous cities in the whole country, and we all live there, and people who would hear that would think like, oh man, you probably barely walk without somebody shooting at you or something there. And people might think about that at like certain parts of Chicago, like, oh, you can't live in all of Chicago, and they don't realize how massive it is and how diverse it is and how you realize what areas you probably should avoid if you can and that kind of thing. And I think Africa's most of Africa is pretty much the same way. Most of it, even now, is at peace in general and is really growing. And most of the areas, David went to the Congo and the Sudan, but even at those times, he wasn't in any areas where there's actually kind of combat and civil unrest going on.
One place when we were in the Congo, we left, and they had actually said like 20 minutes after we left, some rebels came into that city that we were in, we don't know exactly. It was like a 700,000 person city. Again, like Dan was saying, certain places can be more dangerous in a specific city and even in in a specific country. And so we never really saw political unrest. When I've been in Malawi, there was 2 years ago there was this crazy amount of political unrest with the president, and I actually got arrested and I was like held in jail for 4 hours, and one of my really good friends got the crap beat out of him.
Why have
who
I
was
not heard
a
about
local
this?
African. You haven't?
No.
But yeah, I mean, I don't let fear, be something that dominates, my decisions. So.
Yeah, there's in the longer cut. There's a scene where we talk about that fear, and some guy basically tells us that we're going to get our arms cut off when we go to Africa, and he like sits us down. He's like, I don't think you guys know what the heck you're doing. You're going to get your limbs cut off, and it's this great scene where Rob's all scared, and David's like, everything's going to be fine. And but I talk in there, and I think that's fear keeps people from making a difference. And a lot of times they don't go to places because they hear stories about them, like North St. Louis and East St. Louis and St. Louis are places that people talk about and don't visit and then have moved out of. But a lot of ways, especially if you're working with an organization that already has a relationship there, that it's one of the most joyful things is to get involved in these areas that really need help, really need people to overcome that fear and those kind of stigmas that they've gotten, and enter in there and partner and bring services or skills or opportunities that may not be there already.
How would someone be able to be a part of the poverty to help change?
We need to answer that. How can someone be a part of making a difference in poverty?
I was really skeptical of just all the methods of helping in the past. Everyone's just like, give me money so we can do this thing. And you're like, do you really do that thing? Are you really, is all that money going towards the cause you're helping? And so what made a lot of sense for me is microloans. Are you guys familiar with that? Basically, it's someone in poverty or just in a situation applies for a loan of anywhere from about $1,000 to $3,000 and says, I want to start a business selling soda, making scarves, and this is my plan, and I want this much money. And then people online can donate anywhere from like $25 up to the full amount and loan them that money for a year or a year and a half. What I like about that is you can give them your money, and they usually pay it back. I've done probably about 20 of them, and I've only had 2 or 3 default. And then you get your money back after that. And so it's one of those, you're helping people, you're empowering them with their decisions. And I think that's a great place to start. Kiva.org is a great place to look into that. I did that for about 2-3 years, and then I felt like it was a little bit too impersonal for me. And I was just like, I'm clicking on all these loans, and I don't really have the time to reinvest this money. And so I started doing other things. Like I monetized my YouTube account with ads, and over the course of a year, I make anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000. And I don't know if it's in this cup, but our guide in Africa, his name's Tony. He started an AIDS testing facility, and what I did is I took $1,000 and funded his facility for a calendar year, and was able to be responsible for having, I think, 300-400 people get tested for HIV in Nairobi. So little things like that. I think the answer is going to be different from all of us, and the answer will be different of the best way to do it. But I think Dan's got some ways to describe it.
Yeah, so a couple things I'd like to say is, one is that all 3 of us, and even David's brother, cameraman, are all community college graduates. We all went to community college ourselves, and I think Rob says really early on in the film that there's like we're nobody special. Like, well, really, what we hope you don't get out of this is that these guys are great people and that kind of thing. It's like, no, we're just like you guys, community college, grew up in the suburbs, and this, just kind of decided to face some of those fears and try to get out there and do something. And I don't know if you saw it at the end of the film, but it said, ask yourself 2 questions. What breaks your heart? Like, what in this world you're like, that should not be this way? And then what makes you come alive? What do you just love doing? What are you good at? What are you talented at? What, when you do it, like time just flies by? Then how can you take what breaks your heart and what makes you come alive and put those 2 things together? Because we really believe over the 7 years of working on this, that's kind of the message we developed, is that at that intersection is where you find out your purpose. And I think more than just, hey, donate to this organization, it's like, think about how you were made and how you were created and what your desires are and the things that are made to break your heart. So for each of us, something different breaks our heart and something different makes us come alive. And like for myself, what breaks my heart is young people looking for a purpose and not being able to find it. And when there's so many people out there that just need their help, like one of our statements is to connect those who need something to live for with those who just need something to live. And then what I love doing is public speaking and making movies. And so that's what my company does. And so I think the way for you to fight poverty is to really answer those 2 questions. Because those specific things, you're going to build a nonprofit or you're going to volunteer in a very specific way that I think will go a lot longer than you giving kind of $10 here and $20 there.
I would say two things too. The first one is once you kind of discover, most of us probably have something that does break our heart in the world. One of my favorite quotes, it just says, if you see something that's wrong in a community or in the world, like go and live among the people that are going through that and love the people and learn what it is that they have access to and build on that. And of the best leaders, when their task is complete, the people will remark, we've done this ourselves. And so I would encourage, everyone to go to some country in the world that might be, a developing nation that has, a crazy low like GDP or whatever it might be, going through some kind of specific injustice or whatever it might be that you want to learn about. But don't just have it theoretically be this idea in your mind, like, man, it sucks that people go through that. Like, go and meet the people and fall in love with them, and become friends with them. Because I think it's much more likely to want to help someone or have this sustainable motivator inside of you to help someone when it's like, man, my friend Jack is like not able to eat today and I want to do whatever I can to help him, him get fed. And then that'll be something that motivates you. Because another thing is, one thing that I observed just while I was interacting with a ton of people living in extreme poverty, they weren't, some people would, but most of them that I became friends with weren't like, hey, so when can you pay for my lunch? Or, can you give me $10? Or like, all they would ask me is, when can you come back again? When can I see you, Like all they cared about was the relationship that I had developed. That was their priority. It wasn't even looking out for themselves, or preservation for them or making sure that they had what they needed. And so I think that what they really want isn't just for us to give them stuff and think that money is the solution to everyone's problems in the world, but what they desire is that human connection.
I think we have time for maybe 2 questions. 1 or 2 questions.
Hi, I'm a filmmaker myself, and I appreciate your film very much. I'd like to see the full-length version. I had a couple questions that are sort of interrelated. One is, if you're, in part, I guess your purpose was to show the poverty and to motivate people to do something about it. But then when you see people being happy and joyous, you think, well, maybe they're okay. We don't need to help. They're so they have a few, bits of garbage, and so I mean, if at any point that kind of conflict came in your mind, and 2, do you ever, it may be in the longer, discuss structural problems like the multinational corporations, the history of colonialism in particularly in Africa, and how that has really been something that has caused a lot of the problems?
In the full version, there's actually a great line. I'm sure just because you're asking the question, it wasn't in this version. But one of the airline pilots from the company that was responsible for the plane crash, he talks about how at one point he flew this rich man across the country, and he was talking about him and how he saw this happiness within the people. And he said that, oh, they're happy, so I don't need to help them. And he said that was a great tragedy because the guy who had the most ability to change people's lives and to share in their happiness, use that as an excuse to not do it. And I just thought that was such a powerful kind of concept,
I think it misses this idea that, help out because it's an opportunity. Like you see them, like you partnering with them, that's something you're going to find incredible joy in, and both your joys are going to kind of meet and then build that relationship. So we really hope that joy is a motivator, people making a difference. Not, oh, they're happy, I was only going to help them because I felt bad that they were, whatever, had kids with flies on them, but really help because you're going to come alive. It's going to really bring life to you. And then as far as your questions about, do we touch on the history of colonialism and neocolonialism, the impact of multinational corporations and stuff like that was all kind of the original motivator. This was going to be like an educational film. We were going to interview experts and this and that. And then we realized we really want to make more of a common person type film. And one of our goals was to eventually build some kind of educational curriculum that used a lot of our interviews and that type of stuff, but it just kind of financially and other reasons, we just have never gotten a chance to build that project. But yeah, I think colonialism for me was one of the biggest single factors that led to the disparity in the world.
Yeah, I would just add one more thing. I don't think that we should try to be motivated to help people because they need it. And they need me and I have the solution and I'm their savior, because that's very arrogant. I think when we come in humbly and see that they actually maybe can offer us something and they can actually set us free from our own apathy or our own selfishness and our own priorities of things that aren't going to give us joy, and we can actually be invited into the best possible way of living, where we're living for something much bigger than ourselves and something greater, and outside of ourselves, then we can see it as this kind of thing that we both are. Have our needs met, ours emotionally and theirs maybe physically.
Unfortunately, we are out of time, but the guys will be over at their table with their contact list. If you'd like to speak to them more, please do so. If you could join me in thanking Dan, Rob, and David for sharing.
If you're interested in seeing the whole film, you can contact us at whatmattersfilm@gmail.com or sign up on the email list and just say that you're interested in seeing the whole film, and we'll figure out a way to get it in your hands.
Thank you.
Thanks again, guys.
Thank you, guys.